superstars, and welcome back to another episode of Word Up with Danny Katz. I am so excited for today's interview with New Mexico governor candidate Karen Bedonie. I am doing a video preamble to this particular interview for a couple of reasons. One, the interview was a little bit of a departure. We've had these insane rains here in New Mexico. And so Karen didn't have any Wi-Fi access. So she hopped in the car with her assistant to find Wi-Fi access, which put us in motion during the interview and didn't really allow for the kind of deep diving inquiry that I usually love to do. And Karen mentioned so many things that I was like, oh, but I want to ask about that, and I want to ask about that. And it wasn't really that kind of interview. I also want to specify that Karen is running for New Mexico governor on the Libertarian ticket. She had been running as a Republican, and then I guess she had some experiences that indicated that the Republican Party wanted to control her in certain ways. And so to protect her sovereignty and her ability to serve the people of New Mexico, she left the Republican Party and ran as a Libertarian. I do not personally agree with every single policy perspective that Karen is putting forth. That being said, we are in a really intense situation here in this country, and especially in New Mexico, which is the poorest state in the union. And from my perspective, Karen Bedonie is far and above the best candidate we have. And I'm not saying this to sway anyone's vote. I thoroughly believe in free will, and that is completely up to you. But I think the fact that Karen understands what is really happening on a very large, expansive meta scale puts her light years above our other candidates here. And I think the fact that she has a real clear vision of how she intends to serve the New Mexican people, and she has contingency plans for various ways that our current situation works itself out or doesn't work itself out. I think Karen is our best bet for protecting our land, for protecting our people, for protecting our sovereignty. And so I really wanted to give Karen free rein in terms of sharing as many aspects of her platform as possible. So in the honor of supporting Karen, I am changing up my usual structure, wherein the first half is for public consumption and the second half is for paid supporters on my locals and my Patreon. I am choosing to share the entirety of our chat with the public, whether you're a paid supporter on my locals platform or on my Patreon platform or not. I think it is really that important that we get Karen's message out and that we spread word of her candidacy far and wide. So I am inviting you, superstar listener, to be sure to, of course, subscribe to my podcast channel, to also like and share this video far and wide. Karen is not taking donations from the lobbyists, from the corporations, from a lot of those larger entities that allow candidates to get bigger platforms in exchange for favors then owed. She's not rolling that way. So I would like to do my part in sharing word as far and wide as possible. So the entirety of this show is available today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Buckle up. I'm jumping in with New Mexico governor candidate Karen Bedonie.
Yay, thank you so much for going the distance to get a signal to be with me today.
Yes, definitely. It's really it's difficult in rural New Mexico. Our infrastructure for communication needs some work.
Yes, and I'm excited that you will be our new governor and you will take care of that.
Yes, and that's the plan. Right now we're seeing a lot of the roads being washed out from all the rains, and so we had to take a detour today. And so some of the roads are closed because the civil engineering and everything is so bad here. But we are in an uphill battle.
Awesome. Well, since you brought it up, we'll just dive in. Thank you so much for being here, Karen. As a lifelong New Mexican, I'm curious to know, what is your take on these rains? Are these engineered? Is this organic?
Well, there's cycles, but then there's also some very peculiar instances where you see the clouds are coming and all of a sudden it divides. And so there's spots in New Mexico, especially the agriculture area, that are just so dry. It looks like it was burned, but it's just been from the heat and no moisture. But after the fires happened, and then the vegetation is just dead, and then the rains come and it creates a whole flooding situation. So you're kind of you're questioning it. But my counterpart, that's a weatherman, said that he believes in cloud seeding and that they spray us all the time. So we have chemtrails zigzagging over New Mexico on a daily basis. It's always been this way. And I think cloud seeding, if they can engineer this, I believe they can reverse engineer it and stop the rain as well. And he has talked about this through climate change. And they say that, oh, we are bringing the rain, but I think they're actually messing with our atmosphere. I really do.
Yeah, I believe that. So I'm so curious to know your path and what brought you into politics and inspired you to run for governor.
Well, I am just a simple, I guess I'm very humble about the whole process. I was a mom. I am a mom. I have 8 children. I homeschooled all of them because the education system is so bad here. The indoctrination is thick. We live in a socialistic, communistic reservation. Everything that we want to do, even progress, start a business, drill for water, certain things like that, we're not allowed to. It's all controlled. Even the food industry is controlled. Our supermarket, our meats are coming from New Zealand, out of the country. The country of origin labeling system is not accurate. So we're eating meat that's not from here. We're being fed agriculture that's not from New Mexico. Our medical systems are through the roof because we're so unhealthy here. Let's see what else they do. So Big Farm is part of this whole thing. So in our hospitals, we also lost control of our hospitals. They're all government controlled and state controlled. So they're not curing anything. They're just medicating us and keeping us in the game as long as they can. And when you live in this paradigm of socialism, you start to scream in the night because you're like, how are we even supposed to get ahead? How are we supposed to put food on the table? Because we're water haulers. We don't have running water to our home. I haven't had running water. Where I live, we've never had that opportunity to be able to tap the water tables because the government says no. And
wait, can I stop you, Karen? Can you just
sure.
unpack for us what that is like, being a water hauler? Like, break that down, how you get water and how you use water.
Well, so we run our own business. So most of our funding goes to hauling water because we don't have it. It's not just paying a water bill. Water is heavy. So we have to drive a 350 diesel engine in order to haul 300 gallons every few days for 10 people in the home, because I have 8 children. And we have to go twice a day, and we drive, the nearest border town is Gallup, New Mexico. And so that's an hour and a half from our home out and then back in. So it's a 3-hour driving time plus diesel. And so the Green New Deal, you start seeing it impact you. You start seeing the petroleum prices climb in Biden's administration. And then you start to see that the only reason we're working so hard and trying to provide an income is just so we can provide water to our home. So that's what it's like, is not being able to have any luxuries. We don't have like regular cable TV, so we get a lot of our stuff off the internet. We've had to figure out how to, I guess, try to live the American dream the best that you can. And America out there doesn't understand this. The policies that are coming are basically what we've already endured as a tribe. So what I get out there and talk about, I can't even get this, I'm trying to unpack it so fast, but it's so much energy and so much passion. So all the democratic policies that have come down the pipeline the past 10 years have been already done to Indian country. So we are the experiment, you guys are the new application. And this is what I'm fighting now. The 30 by 30, the Green New Deal, the 50 by 50, look all those up. Those are basically the breakdown of America, and they're wrapping one big policy around the country. You are the new application. You are the new Indians. This is the new reservation. What you are seeing right now is just a taste of it. The taste of not being able to afford things, not being able to eat steak anymore, but now you have to go to hamburger. Pretty soon it's going to go to canned meat. And then even the cheeses aren't that great. Then all of a sudden you're going to go to very processed cheese because it's cheaper. Then you're going to start seeing your health, take a turn. This is all from Indian country, and this is poverty. They are engineering the biggest poverty war on the people, and it's difficult to watch. So as a Native American Navajo woman, I came out of the reservation to basically wake up the masses. You need to wake up before we lose our country. It's a republic if we can keep it. And we aren't even doing anything about it. We're complacent and we're letting them. Now they're going to disarm us. And that's how they conquer a people. It's when they disarm you. Once they take our guns, it's over. We have to hold on to our Second Amendment, and we must fight for our economy. So the economy, poverty, socialism, communism, control, fear, indoctrination, it's all wrapped up into one big spider web. And I'm here fighting it. And that's why I'm running for governor.
Thank you so much I cannot tell you how much hope you give me and how excited I was when I found your podcast and heard your position on things. Were you always political, or is this an unforeseen pivot?
Well, I guess I've been always political. My grandmother was political. She always was in there pushing for the right of the people. She always was about humanitarian efforts and also helping one another. And it's called K'e in our language. It's about family. You have to look at people as family members so you don't injure each other. But there's a lot of humanistic aspects that creep in, like jealousy, envy, greed, and those end up being the deadly sins in the Bible. And so being political is fighting those things, and it's a very spiritual war right now. And what my grandmother she taught me in this political realm is that everything is in politics. So if you sit there and say, well, I don't really get into politics, but you know what? Politics is controlling you. And the fact that you don't get into it, that means they're successful. We were so complacent that we've lost our America, basically. And we are fighting for it back. And there's very few of us patriots. They actually are true patriots. People out there, when patriotism actually comes knocking or calls, people won't answer the call. They won't do it. They're afraid. They're afraid to answer the call. And it's scary because when you see it in the paradigm as I seen it, it's about life or death right now. And so I'm here, and I've devoted my life right now to the Lord and to Jesus. And I know what's happening. I know what's coming down the pipeline, and I just keep trying to wake up the masses. So running for governor, yeah, the highest seat, yeah, we're going to say what we have to say. But in this position, I can actually create protection for the people, especially for what's coming down the pipeline, because the Biden administration and things that they're pushing, Kamala Harris and Pelosi, they are nuts, but they are on one agenda. So we think that they're dumb and they don't understand. No, they are a machine. And if we don't get our stuff together and stop them, then we're lost. America will be gone. And see, my tribe is responsible for the code talkers. And my grandfather told me that you have to stand up and save America. The code word in Navajo was Nihama. That meant America. She's our mother. If we lose her, we lose everything. So that's why we fight so hard. So I'm in a war, and yeah, I'm on the ground, and it's very difficult.
I can relate. I can totally relate. Were you always, like you said, your grandmother was a big influence. So were you always hip to the scam that is running beneath the surface of America? Or did you have one of those like 9/11 wake up moments?
It was a 9/11 wake up moment, I think. We didn't really know. She's a Democrat, actually. My grandmother's a Democrat. So was my mom and my father. They're Democrats. I'm a Republican, but now I'm running as a Libertarian because I found that both parties are corrupt. They're all hooked at the hip. It's two heads of the same snake. And I'm understanding this because New Mexico Republican politics is corrupt. We've lost our GOP. So I had to cut myself loose and see the truth for what it was. And what she did tell me was it's always about the people. And that's what the Neh means. We call our tribe. What tribe are you from? The Neh. It literally translates to the people. You have to make sure that you never lose focus of that. And if we do that, then we're actually on the right track. Mm-hmm. And so when the wake up call came was when I was calling it an epidemic. I said, there's an epidemic coming because the hospitals, I died in 2014 giving childbirth, and they didn't help me, and it was mediocre healthcare, and I was frustrated. And when I came back, the healing process was horrendous, but I lived on basically Tylenol because they didn't have any real medication for me. and it was in childbirth, and also blood clotting and all that business was going on, and I was having a very hard time. And I was privy to something's not right. And then I was relabeling because I was a cross country coach, wrestling coach. So I was about the nutrition of my children. And I found out that they're pumping all of the crazy crap stuff closer to the reservation border towns. That's why our health is so bad. And then I started to look at the education because my son brought home an application. And I thought it was a work or job application. They were teaching kids life skills or something. But then I looked at it closer and I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm filling this out. And it was a food stamp application. I was like, what? And the indoctrination started coming and it just started falling. And then so when Trump started running in 16, no one believed it. They didn't. And I knew that he was going to win. So I was on board way in 15, even before actually I knew when he came down that escalator that this is a businessman and he's not part of the corrupt part of it. Then I started to unravel corruption. How do you hide money? Where do you hide money? You have to put it in a place where the FBI can't go and federal audits can't go and state audits can't go. But where's that? It's inside Indian country where sovereignty is. Sovereignty was never for us. Sovereignty is for the politicians to hide money. And that's when I started to unravel it and started chasing different contractors that didn't exist. And we found out that because we're contractors on the reservation, but we were losing bids. We couldn't get a bid to save ourselves. And then we found out that these companies that we were losing bids to didn't even exist. So they were shell corporations. And that's where it. And I started to unravel it and it got worse and worse. And I kept pulling the string, you know, how you unravel a knitted sweater and you're trying to see where it ended up. It ended up right over to our own Republican Party. And I left the party.
Wow. And when did you leave the party officially?
Let's see, this past spring. Because I made a lot of friends and a lot of people, a lot of really, really great relationships during the Trump election in 2020. I was on the ground. I was fighting the restrictions, the mandates. I didn't want to wear a mask. I refused to get, jabbed. I didn't want the vax. I didn't want any of that. I wanted my freedom. And that's what I was fighting for. And when I got close to election, I started running for office and I started saying the things that were truth bombs, and they were starting to panic because I was actually, calling things out. They started to work against me. And the people that I had that were friends that were Republicans were like, this is what's happening. This is what they're saying. So they were giving me screenshots of conversations, plans, deception. And I thought, this is my own party. We haven't even started fighting the Democrats yet. What are we doing here? And so just before I declared my candidacy lawfully with the Secretary of State, I sat there and I thought about it. I prayed really hard, and something in my heart told me, you need to get out of this race you have to outmaneuver them. So I did. I called the Libertarians. I said, you don't have a candidate? They're like, well, you have a lot of support here. So they let me in. And I said, I'm going to run on this ticket and I'm going to do my best to help carry the flag, the American flag of freedom and liberty and individual principle. But I can't stand with you on all of your principles of, they have some kind of leftist policies in there that I don't agree with. But they're like, it's okay. We don't have a candidate anyway. So they let me in. And so I flipped within 48 hours before the declaration, because you have to go out and get signatures. I had to meet a threshold, I believe, of 4%. And so we hustled, and I called for the Army of the 300 across New Mexico, all my supporters. Within 48 hours, relayed enough petition signatures all the way up to Santa Fe. And by 5 o'clock was the deadline. By 4:48, I was in those doors with just enough. And we made affidavits for everybody. We made sure all the registrations were current, and we sent it in. And then the Republicans tried to sue me and get me off the ballot. And so we fought that too in court, and then they appealed it. We went to Supreme Court, and I still won, and out of technicalities, because they're not as smart as I thought they were. But we got it done. And so I became a Libertarian overnight, and it was because they opened the door for me, and it was the support of the people that believe in what I'm saying helped me get there. When I did that, the Republicans lost their minds. And then they started working hard against me. They have said everything. They have sent misinformation, disinformation. I am the same person. I am unwavered. I was a Trump supporter. I am a diehard conservative. I believe in God. And I am about God and country, the Constitution. And I have not even stopped. But the Republicans have fought me consistently. Right now, we're fighting another complaint. It's an ethics commission that's bogus. But it's the Republicans, they're doing it. And I thought, wow, this is the party that I really felt was my party. And I fought for them. I defended them. But as soon as you decide to remove yourself because you just want a fair election and stay in your own lane, they're dirty. They fight like liberals. And I'm thinking, are we infiltrated? Did we lose the party? Because when you pick a fight with a conservative, a true conservative, they are humbling. They will give you the facts and then they'll leave you alone. They live and let live. But a liberal that walked away and calls themselves a Republican is basically a rhino. When you pick a fight with them, they go all bananas. They act like those leftist, progressive, crazy people. They name call you. They will do anything. They kick, scratch, spit, name it. And so I figured it out. That's how you can tell a rhino from a real conservative, is you pick a fight with them. And so I've been picking fights all over the state and I've uncovered everybody. So they call me the rhino hunter here in New Mexico.
I love that. And so do you think the Republican Party is fundamentally corrupt, or do you think it's because of the infiltration that they're going after you?
I think it's the infiltration. I also think the Republican Party, that's my home. That's where I grew up in. I believed in it. The foundation of what I had created was Calvin Coolidge, President Calvin Coolidge, 1924. He's the one that signed in the American Civilization Act and gave us our Constitution and our freedom and our right to vote. So I loved the Republican Party with all my heart. And it was Ronald Reagan who inspired me to be a free American, to believe in less government and to stand up on your own and start your businesses and to taste the fruit of liberty. And I love it. And I am a Republican down to the core. I am a better Republican than a lot of these old geezers out there that, want to control things, because I believe in true freedom and what it was laid out for us. Now, I think the Republican Party needs to be cleaned out and revamped, but the original principles and the reasoning behind it is still why I am the way I am. It shaped me. It made me the American I am. I just believe we lost our party. I think it's not fundamentally, across the board, but then you think about it, the RNC, they're backing rhinos all over the place. So maybe they're infiltrated at the top level as well. I don't know, because they're doing some really peculiar things right now. And I don't get it, because they're not standing consistently. They're flip-flopping. And Arizona called me and they're like, the Republicans are pushing the upper deck is pushing all the rhinos and all the real hardcore patriots that were on the ground for Trump. They didn't get endorsed. And so they were upset. And so now they're all pulling back and they're all kind of looking at it. And I got phone calls saying that, you know what, you saw what was happening. You seen it, but you were the only one with enough courage to literally jump and leave that party and still stand for who you are. We didn't have enough courage to do it, and we all got burned. And it's sad. It's sad we're losing our country because we can't outmaneuver, because we become so inapt to loving these parties. But you know what? Party is not in the Constitution. So what I'm doing now is I am speaking as an American, and I am uniting people as Americans. And parties, they can take a back seat right now, because you know what? They speak with forked tongues, and we don't know the difference.
Yeah. And what do you say to people who say that a third party candidate can't win?
It's funny, because I need to be, if you look in the Bible, Gideon, they need to underestimate me. And I love it, because keep doing that. Keep underestimating me. If all the Christians voted, I would win. See, for me, I worked so hard as a conservative Republican that I've made tons and tons of relationships. So third party, if you look at 100% of the vote, I think she, MLG, the incumbent Democrat, she got like 51% or so. And our Rhino.
Do you think that that's real, or do you think that's Dominion?
I think it's Dominion. Okay, so this is the fun part. Okay, so let me finish. So with the Rhino, he had like 42% or something like that, and I got the rest of it. Now, if I get 15% of the Republican vote and I get 15% of MLG's vote, they're all going to drop to the low 30s or the high 29s. And please, I already have the Libertarians, the Independents. We haven't even talked about Indian country, but we're going to come into the high 30s and we'll be able to win this thing. It's very plausible. It's exciting. Now the Dominion machine, it was brought to you by Mark Ranketti's campaign manager. He's the one that ushered it into the state of New Mexico through Susana Martinez administration. She's our past governor. It was a Republican that signed the Dominion machine into New Mexico. It was their fault, and they knew what they were getting into, and there's payouts and there's invoices and everything they've uncovered. They have it all, but nobody wants to talk about it. That's why the Republicans did nothing during the 2020 cycle. They wouldn't back Trump in New Mexico. They wouldn't go through it and say, we wanted a forensic audit. We called for it, but they said, oh, it costs too much money. The chair, Steve Pierce, did everything he could to avoid the Dominion question and voter integrity. So yeah, it's rigged, but my thing is God wins. But however, every time we talk about data, they only bring up the Dominion machine, Republicans versus Democrats. That's all it was doing. I think is not calculated for a third party win. I think the X factor is me, and they don't know what to do with me. That's why they're fighting so hard to take me out. And I just got word in that Mark Ronchetti offered me a cabinet position if I drop out. You don't do that if you're not scared. You don't do that if you think I'm not going to beat you. So yeah, we're going to win this thing. So we're pushing hard, and we're going to say what we need to say. But I'm excited because I'm unwavered and unswayed, and I fear no man.
I love that. I could feel that in my bones. And I was surprised when all the craziness started around the so-called pandemic. I thought that all the tribes would shut it down and be like, no, we're not doing this and we're sovereign. So how are you being received by Indian country in light of the unforeseen, I was surprised by the response to all the tyranny.
Right. Well, Indian country, there's two different factors. You got the leadership, people that are in high levels, and the politicians, then you got the people. With the people on the ground, the ones that are voters that actually look out and check out the landscape and look at the different candidates and do their research, we have them. We have all of them. The ones that just talk a lot of trash on social media, they're not even registered to vote. They don't even understand politics. They're the ones that are talking trash about me. Now, the upper deck in the political realm, they're all bought and paid for. Because again, remember I told you that it's corrupted and they're hiding money here. We are one big laundry machine. Because how are we the most heavily funded people in America with the poorest population? Because we never feel that money. So when I get out and you give me that mic, it's over. I'll take all of them. That's why Ronchetti won't debate me. That's why people will they refuse to. They just want to stick their finger in their ear and not listen to me. But when start talking and they ask me the real questions, I'll tell them the answers. I'll tell them what we found out. And we have more research still happening. So many more people are out there researching. And so our files are just stacking, and it's pretty phenomenal. But I think we're getting them. We're getting them. Indian country just needs some support. They need some help. They need us to really enter their lives at the level of in their living rooms. What are your children going through? What are you going through? What does your refrigerator look like? What does your income look like? What does your vehicle look like? I mean, when you're in poverty, it's very stressful. And so they need a leader that will understand us and recognize it and also not judge them. Because being a Navajo woman, I can humbly walk into these places, especially with the homeless, and not judge them. I see people, I see human beings, and I don't judge them. I love the sinner, but not the sin, so to speak. And this is how we have to work with Indian country. Once they understand there's some compassion behind it, then they will believe. So Mark Ronchetti right now he has no idea what he's talking about. He cannot represent Indian country. He cannot represent me. Therefore, he is inadequate. He is incomplete as a candidate. He will be the most incomplete governor we've ever had, because I am the third option that knows what's happening in rural New Mexico, the cattle country, the agriculture, the water, the mineral rights, the extractions, the oil and gas, coal. I know everything that's out there that has to do with it, because you know what? We have brothers and sisters that worked in all these different areas, and we're the package. And that's just, I guess that's the answer to all of it, is Indian country needs to realize that they finally have one of their own that's ready to move forward and is strong enough. So after 150 years of oppression and suppression, here I am. I can speak English, very well. I can read policy. I can write policy. I can understand exactly what's happening, and I can unravel the demonic policies that want to prison and cripple an entire nation.
Hmm. And what are some of the changes and solutions you're most excited to implement?
Oh, education and the economy. We have a wonderful, wonderful plan that's going to ignite the economy. We are going to make New Mexico first. So if we get Trump back in office or another conservative, because I think the Democrats aren't going to win this round because Joe has screwed this up so bad and Kamala is a cackling nothing, that we will be done and we will put in a conservative president. And most of them are America first, what they're talking. They want to be America first candidates. They're trying to sell that marketing point. And I think if they want America to be first, they need a Navajo businesswoman who will be able to negotiate New Mexico first. So we'll be first in line. And I am determined to make sure that our oil and gas is the first one to go, and also our coal, and we'll be able to ignite the economy here in New Mexico. I'm also going to get rid of the gross receipt tax so that we can inspire the entrepreneurial spirit and also other businesses to move here to New Mexico, especially manufacturing jobs. And then on the other side of the candle wick of poverty, we're going to light it up, and I'm going to inspire and encourage the population. I need 11 to 14% of New Mexico to become entrepreneurs and small business owners, and we're going to incentivize it. And instead of throwing money into the poverty sector, we're going to try to squeeze them and move that money to the entrepreneurial sector for better medical for them. And when you are inspired to become a business owner, and we all hire 1 to 2 New Mexicans, we can literally wipe out our unemployment rate. I am looking at igniting the American dream here. If it's your dream to do something amazing, I want you to do it, because look at me. This is me, and I'm doing almost the impossible. But if I can get there and make it possible, we can literally help everybody, from the small babies to to the elderly, and then also going on to war against the abortionists. I'm excited because it's a big challenge. We have a blue House and a blue Senate that pushed abortion up to 12 months. So literally a 12-month-old baby can get birthed, and then they can throw it into the sink and piece it out. And we are the murdering capital of the country here in New Mexico. So I'm excited to take.
Are people doing that? Are people?
Yes, they're piecing them out, and these babies are being sold as body parts. And so you think about the lucrative amount of marketing and business that's happening with Planned Parenthood. So we're going to go to war, and I'm a fighter. I am a pro-life woman, but I have figured out bureaucracy and policy in the hands of the governor. I can literally fight the best war, and I can save 98% of those babies, even with the worst laws in New Mexico. I have a plan for it, and I'm excited to show them this is how you Indian fight. This is how you do it. We're going to go around and we're going to figure this out. And it's through policy, and it's through education. It's through giving these young ladies that have a question about, can I do this? Can I be a mom? Yes, you can. And we're going to educate them. And it's not just a simple little fix. No, we're going to make Planned Parenthood inside New Mexico. In order for them to even function here, they have to have so much training that costs so much money that it's not even lucrative to be here in New Mexico. We're going to fight them economically. They're going to hate me, but you know what? I don't care. I'm here to save those children. And I think that also the children that are here, we need to also look at pro-chance, giving the chance of a beautiful life to these children. There's so many kids lost in CYFD that we do not have the means to account for every one of them. I want to know how many children have fallen through the cracks, how much of the system has failed them. So I'm going after to save our babies and our children, and also our elderly. I want them to have the best retirement package here, where you don't have to pay ridiculous taxes. You came here, you paid your debt. And then also, I think we need to get that border wall under control. And I'm excited for that one too, because guess what? I'm a welder by trade. That's who I am. I'm going to go down there and create a total production and make sure that wall gets finished. Whatever Trump started, we have to finish. And I will have to put on my welding gear again, and I will throw down bead just to show the American people that, yeah, we're going to get our hands dirty, but it's going to be the callous and the will and the sweat and blood and tears of the American people that we can save our country. And I'm going to do this by showing New Mexico we were going to come from the 50th place of, we are the worst in everything, education, name it. We are crime ridden. And it's exciting because the only way is up. And I'm excited. So those are the policies I'm looking forward to.
I love that, Karen. I love your fire. And I'm curious to know, like, it seems like there's so many nefarious forces working here in terms of child trafficking, in terms of the labs, in terms of whatever's going on underground. Have you come up against that? And does that inform what you plan to do here?
Yeah, there's a lot of things working. I think New Mexico is probably one of the most corrupt and darkest parts of the country.
Yeah.
You have to look at history and how it was made, the different, I guess, land grants, water grants, what they've done to us, our resources in the ground. Why are we blue? Why did Joe Biden come here? I mean, to look at the fires when he didn't care. Why did Jill Biden fly here right after they took office? And the first place she went was to Navajo Nation. There's a lot of corruption here, and it's hidden. And see, no one wants to talk about Zorro Ranch. That's here in New Mexico.
Right.
That is part of the whole Epstein. It's disgusting, but no one's done investigation yet. No one's asked the right questions. And why was that even that house even allowed to be built? Because supposedly it didn't even pass environmental clearances because there's Native American artifacts in those areas. That's why it was so isolated, and there was no other buildings, and other people didn't know what was happening in that area. And so this goes way back into the history of New Mexico. So if you start climbing into the history, you start reading and understanding the Santa Fe Ring. Does it still exist is the next question. So I've been researching and looking at Billy the Kid, and everybody thinks, oh, he's Billy the Kid, and they Hollywood glamorized him, and some people call him a hoodlum, but then what was he really fighting? And I have a podcast on that too. But there's things still happening that are historical that I think that are remnants of the fight between good and evil, between God and Satan. And it's here. And you have to be a praying person for you to get through it. You have to hold on to God with both hands, and you have to hold the line and hold that rod. And then you have to start pushing when it's time. And the way you do that is just through prayer. Excuse me. But yeah, it's bad. It's thick. And if you are not prepared, it'll swallow you whole and tear you apart. And that's what happens to all these politicians. As soon as they get into office, they get bought and paid for, and you start seeing it even in their legislations. So there's one legislation I always talk about was by Karen Bash out of the Albuquerque district. She ran legislation for wildlife. The first section was about wildlife permitting, hunting, the basics. But then when you got down to section 2, pedophilia, how do you allow it to pass? And so they send in this trash packages, and they do it in packages because they need to hide it. And that's what they're doing in DC as well. They need to make sure they piece it out. And as a governor, I will rip into them. How dare you try to mask this to the American people? I will veto the crap out of that, and I will go down to that floor and I will rip into them on that microphone. I will let the American people see me do it too. I refuse to be made a spectacle, and also to be told that you're too stupid to read this stuff, that you're going to sign it into office. I mean, into law. The legislation they throw at you is just it's trash. So we are dealing with a lot. The corruption is huge, and I see it. And I think it's the light that we have to shine and let the cockroaches run. And that's the only way we're going to be able to do this.
And do you know what was Joe Biden doing with the Navajo Nation?
See, and that's the kicker, is nobody knows. They came in to visit. But like I said, sovereignty wasn't given to us, the people, because they loved us and they thought that we needed sovereignty. No, they gave us sovereignty to hide stuff. So that's the question, is the federal government and the people that really want to know what happens to the tax money of the American people, we're going to have to do investigations and unravel it. So you have to ask your question, why? And once you start doing that and your mind starts to go forward and you realize that, this is what's happening. So yeah, they come to New Mexico, and we've had Bill Clinton here. He went to one of the governor's funerals, and everybody can't figure out, where did he stay? No one saw him. He came, but he showed up to Moriarty High School for the funeral, and that was really close to Zorro Ranch, so that's where he was staying. And so we know this, and so people have documented things, people have seen things. We also now have, because we're bringing it to light, we have a lot of girls that are now talking, people that have been trafficked. Missing, murdered Indigenous women is not a myth, it's a real thing here. And so we have to tackle so much, but yeah, it's all hooked in. And so the American population that has been digging, that's awake, it's disgusting, but I'm glad that they all did the work so that we all can have the voice, because I think the internet is also erasing things and scrubbing. And I think we just have to keep fighting and keep holding the line.
Yeah, for sure. And I can tell you, as a journalist, that they're definitely scrubbing the internet at warp speed. So for those of us who know you know, like everyone who's colluded in this current sham around lockdowns and injections and destroying family businesses under the auspices of a pandemic, are there any plans to enforce justice upon the people who attempted to destroy New Mexico?
There needs to be, because our governor right now, Michelle Lujan Grisham, is everything you just described.
Mm-hmm.
She did this, and I think all those deaths are on her head, and that should be her legacy. That should be the chiseling notification on the millstone that we wrap around her neck and throw her into the ocean of knowledge. That's what I really believe we need to do, and we need to make sure she doesn't live it down. And so, yes, history needs to mark this. Books need to be written, and we need to make sure that this is taught inside school. Because you know what? The CDC is currently saying the unvaxxed and the vaxxed do not have different protocols now. So basically the vax got vaxxed for nothing. But then now you're seeing blood clots, brain aneurysm, heart attacks, all these things are happening, but they're not calling it about the vax. Well, oh, sure, when COVID was happening, you get into a car accident, it was COVID. They have done a disservice to the history of the American people, and I think they need to be branded with it. They also need to, we need more stringent laws, and we need to be able to hold them accountable. And I think that's one thing Michelle Lujan Grisham is going to run from. She's probably going to move when she loses, because she will not be safe here. She can't even go grocery shopping without getting yelled at or spit on. And that's where it's at right now. And we can't stop the public, especially if they lost loved ones. We buried so many people during her administration. She is, okay, you see they're loading up pipe and stuff. Actually, we're working, but yes, I think that the people need to be put into prison. I really do. They've done so much disheartening heartbreak to the people. We put so many people in the ground, and I can't even imagine what the numbers are. Even the suicide numbers for the youth after they were locked down from schools and they didn't know how to just be isolated, and a lot of them committed suicide. So we had the highest suicide rates during COVID here in New Mexico, and all the businesses that shut down, how many lives that she destroyed, livelihoods, because we believe fundamental laws, you have a right to make a living. And when they shut you down and they allowed it to happen, the American people should have stood up, but they didn't. They let the fear and the indoctrination overtake them. That's why you need a governor that has enough courage to understand the 10th Amendment, to tell them, you know what, Fauci, you need to sit down and let us run our states the way we see it. You know, I really enjoyed Kristi Noem, how she allowed the people to have the responsibility to take care of themselves. If you felt that you were in danger, stay home. But if you knew that you had an immune system and you felt that, you know what, I want to be and become immune, then, you know, have your freedom to do as you choose. And that's the kind of governor I wanted. And so that's the kind of governor I want to be, is the one that allows freedom and liberties of the people. So when they keep trying to push mandates, and also they try to legislate morale, it ends up impacting people on all levels, because I want my guns. I don't want you to determine if I'm capable enough or not. I want my rights, my constitutional rights. And that's basically where it sits at. So yeah, we need to have more stringent laws and hold them accountable.
Yeah, for sure. And I can tell you, just from my experience in Santa Fe, our mayor and our city council, like I was sending them facts and links and statistics from the get-go, so they can't claim ignorance about this and all the harm that they've done here in Santa Fe specifically either.
Right. Yeah, they knew, and I think they were all on board. And now they're not saying anything about it. So now you're going to claim, you know, ignorance or irresponsibility or what, you know. My thing is, if you're ignorant, then why are we going to reelect you? And if you were irresponsible, then why would we reelect you? So I think that we also need to stand up and voice those things and say, yes, they knew the data, and they hid it from us, and we had the cure. We had ivermectin, we had hydroxychloroquine, and I know it works because, you know what, I self-medicated when I was in the hospital. So if you watch that podcast, where I literally fought my way out of the hospital because they wanted to give me remdesivir and ventilate me. And I said I wouldn't do it. So then they said, well, if you're not going to do the protocol, we need you to sign a do not resuscitate order. So then I was throwing stuff at them. I said, get out of my room. No, I just need my vitamins and leave me alone. And so they said, oh, she's going to die. So I had to self-medicate from a conservative doctor who prescribed the medicines that I needed, and I had family go pick it up, and then they got it into my room. They had to smuggle it into the hospital, and I literally self-medicated, and it took me 3 days to get out of bed, and I was back home. See, we had the cure. They denied us the cure. So my thing is, I think they should be accountable for the death. That means manslaughter. That means you will serve prison and life.
Yes. From your mouth to God's ears, may justice be served, for sure.
Amen.
Yeah. And do you have a plan in place as far as this critical race theory, this sort of weird racism that's infiltrating its way? I'd love to hear it.
Well, it has to do with the empowering the parents. Because me, as a parent, I knew what was happening, and I didn't agree with it. So I would pull my kid from school. Now, the people that don't think it's a big deal, they like CRT, but they also have freedoms to do what they want to do. So it's really tricky, and you can't legislate morale, like I said. However, with the education system, what we can do is we can fund the parent per child. So for K through 12, if we give a tax credit to each kid across New Mexico, no matter if you're rich or poor, it's an $8,000 tax credit. You put the power of the child education back into the parent. They are the CEO of that child anyway, because they're going to protect and love and raise that child. It's their child. And you re-empower the school board systems. We basically wrap a muzzle around PED and pull it back and eventually dismantle it, because PED has no real understanding of the education system in New Mexico, because they do a blanket one size fits all across the whole state, and it never did anything for us. And then the Secretary of Education needs to be, that position needs to be wiped out. It's a salary eater. It doesn't do anything for us. But what we do is we put the power back into the school boards. But the funding is from the parents. So if you are in a school system that's pushing CRT and you don't agree with it, because one little boy down in South New Mexico, he was told he was going to go through a theater drama type education, partaking of it, and he was assigned to play the princess, and he would have to put on a dress and a crown, and his parents said no. And so his parents went back to the school, the principal, administration, and the administration told him, well, if you're not going to go by the curriculum, then he's going to be suspended from school and not get that grade. So this is CRT in massive amounts of it. It's gender crazing. It's mixing up people in their heads. So if that parent had that money, they could literally remove that child, and they'd have to prorate them and cut them that check, and then they could move their child to a better school, a conservative school with better administration. Inadvertently, it creates competition like business. So then when you have a good school, you start to see the numbers grow and they get more funding. So the more funding there is, that means they have better teachers, and the parents love it, because the textbooks are great. They're getting fed well. They have no complaints. And so they push their children into these education areas. So this is the ultimate pro-choice. Now, when we see this from our end, we will be able to incentivize these schools that balloon, that get really big. Then we get to say, okay, they're doing the right thing. So then we can actually give better paying jobs to the better teachers. And then we start to fund conservative, good schools. Now, the ones that are pushing this crazy CRT agenda, even though they rename it and they say they're not, and they're denying and they're fighting the parents, you're going to watch their school shrink. You're going to watch their classroom shrink. And that competitive measure is going to naturally do itself. So these teachers that are horrible, that are upset, they're crying, they're cussing at kids, there are bad apples out there. They're going to be identified by the fact that the money's going to show that they have no more students in their class, that these parents will have the power to remove and have a say-so in their child's education. And that's the best we can do. And what does it removes the government. Less government, I keep saying, less government is where it's at, and freedom. And so you give that freedom to the parents, and the school-age children are now protected because their parents are now involved. So that's how you're going to see this work. And we know it works because I pulled my kids and I homeschooled. So if you're going to homeschool, you also have that power to keep that money to apply it to your school textbooks. If you need computers in your home, you need these different aspects, especially in rural New Mexico, where a 2-hour bus ride to school is not, doesn't make any sense to you to put a kid on the bus for that long.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that kind of money will help supplement also the family. So for instance, I had 8 kids. So if I decided to homeschool or not, and this package was in place, I would have had $64,000, and I wouldn't have to go to work. I could have stayed home and raised my babies, and I would have educated them the best that I could, because I would have had the money to do so. But we had to scrape together to homeschool. We got it done, but I mean, it was hard. but I would have loved to had that choice to give them a very expensive education, like hiring a music teacher, an art teacher, hiring a chef to really come in and cook, you know, different, you could do things like that. This seems not conducive in a public setting. So there's different ways to educate your child, but it's up to you. And that's how I feel that we can do this, and we can weed out CRT and eventually get rid of it, and it just becomes a thing of the past.
And where will the money come from for these stipends?
It's the same way it comes from our, we were looking at it so that we pay into our education anyway. And so that's where the money's gonna come from. It's the same thing, how we fed PED and how we fund PED and how we fund all the schools. It's just a different way of funding. It just provides power. It's the same funding. You just have to move it into the different hands, how it's spent. Because right now, when you put the power of spending into the government, they have the power to enforce masks, to enforce the jab, to enforce CRT and not call it CRT. The power is in the wrong hands. So it's the same money. We're just going to move it into the hands of the actual child.
And I'm curious, I've been in New Mexico since 2011, and it's changed really drastically in the past few years. And all of a sudden I see in all these businesses, they're like Black Lives Matter stickers and posters. And I'm wondering how that lands with you as a Navajo woman in terms of our actual on the ground culture here in New Mexico.
Right. Well, Black Lives Matter, even some of the natives picked it up. They saw it as the way the media pumped it out. It was an indoctrination aspect. They put fear. It was always, it's very racial, and they wanted to always fight for the minorities because we are a majority. We're a majority minority state, I should say. So most of the majority of New Mexicans are minority, I should say. So with the Black Lives Matter, a lot of it is misconception and misinformation and misunderstanding of what it really is. What we have to do as New Mexicans is we have to hold the media accountable as well. A lot of them are pumping out bad stuff. They're not they're not being very clear on what it is. And so we have to provide those. So Black Lives Matter, I think we have to hold those kind of organizations. They have to publicly post their funding source. Is it George Soros or who is it? You know, what is your intent here, and why are you doing it? And they need to make those public for the people to see. They just come in one big swoop, because we're seeing it here on Indian country too. The same people that fund Black Lives Matter and Antifa are also funding the Red Hand and also a lot of the different organizations here on Indian country. They give it real nice names, like, you know, I can't even think of it now, but they give them good names, just like America the Beautiful, but really it's the 30 by 30 policy. And it just because of the title of the book says something nice, doesn't mean the book is about and horrendous. So we have to publicize and make sure we educate the public on what these organizations are and what is their intent. Their intent is to break down the people. And that's what we're doing, is we're going to flip each other against each other. And it's about fighting and looting, especially on small businesses that we not know what they were doing. They were looting they were looting us and burning businesses and, you know, in these other cities, and it's all boarded up, but they thought they were doing something great but then it was the business owners that were getting injured and hurt. They lost everything. They lost their lives. And yeah, it's a mess out there, but we have to clean it up, and we have to do it starting with our state, I think.
Yeah, totally. And have you compiled some sort of list or database? I didn't realize that a lot of the organizations funding Black Lives Matter were also funding these supposedly philanthropic pro-Indian organizations, I guess?
Yeah, Bill Gates is one of them. He was a big funding of Navajo education scholars. And they took them and they said, well, you want you to go to a university, not vocational. So they they're called the Gates Millennium Scholars, and a lot of them were Navajo. And they took the best, the smartest, and the brightest of these kids, and they sent them through leftist universities to get these social justice warriors degrees. And so you're seeing them right now, and they're on the ground, and they think that they're fighting. They literally think they're doing good. They're out there fighting for, you know, certain things stop oil and gas. It's killing Mother Earth and the environmentalist understanding of it. But oil and gas was given to us by, Heavenly Father, and it's a natural resource in the ground. So when you make a road and drive on it, when people lay down the asphalt, it's literally a controlled oil spill. That's what we're doing when we're laying highway and road.
Mhm.
But then when it rains so hard, and where does all the growth happen? It happens on the side of the road. And then all the deer and the cattle that get out of the fencing, what are they grazing? They're grazing on the side of the road. So you're thinking about it, well, if it's so toxic and horrible, then why is the vegetation and everything flourishing along the highway?
Right.
And so the aspects of real truth and I guess cognitive understanding and putting it into a package so that you can understand it, it's absent. So when they go into these leftist universities, they're told that petroleum is, ripping the earth apart. It's doing all these different things. And it's this, and they're pumping this indoctrination into them. So when they come out with their degrees, they literally believe that they're doing good, but they're injuring the economy. They're injuring society. And we have to move with the times. We have to do it in a very responsible manner. We have to take care of the earth, but then we also can extract. And we have the technology now. Carbon catch systems are here. There is no carbon going to be released with these coal plants. Not what I think the carbon catch percentage that the Obama administration wanted us to meet, we actually exceeded. So burning coal is not as what it used to be. And so the education process, and so Bill Gates and all these people, these philanthropists that funded the scholarships, I think it was an intent to take the brightest and smartest of our people and turn them into social justice warriors for the left. And we're seeing this across the board. They fund everything. There's all these little organizations, like Rock the Vote was a big one. They came out, oh yeah, we all gonna get everyone to register Rock the Vote. No, that was not part of it. That was part of the Dominion Project, and it all hooks back into it. But you see all these organizations coming into the Navajo Nation. And yes, we do have a list, not really a database, but mostly just notes, because when they come across the board, we look at them, we research them, and we figure it out. A lot of them are fronts. They use Native Americans to register them on Indian country so they can exist, and it looks like it's Native owned and backed, but no, these people are being funded, just dark money. And we know how it works. And so we're watching them. And so we have people on the ground and a lot of conservatives, and they're worried. They're worried how the money is influencing people in their minds, but they do it in all different sorts and fashions.
Yeah, totally. And it's so clear when we look into Bill Gates' investments, it's population control and it's curriculum. It's those
genocide.
Yeah, exactly.
Real genocide.
Legit. And so what do we do about the young adults who are out of school and have been duly indoctrinated and genuinely think that they're doing good things while they're shredding our democratic republic? What's the solution for these people who are now out of school, but badly, confused, very confused?
Well, most of them are angry because they still live in poverty, because this social justice leftist funding source can't make them rich, and it can't make them comfortable, and it won't give them any kind of understanding of self-fulfillment. They won't have it. So how we battle that is through small business and entrepreneurship. And when you start giving them the taste of freedom and understanding, standing up, they don't grasp on to these organizations anymore for help. They don't feel the victim anymore. So we have to empower them to be self-resilient and be the Navajo people that we've always been. We are wonderful, business-oriented conservatives. And once you start feeding that through business, you get better health services if you're a small business owner, as opposed to being poor in poverty and just going to IHS and getting ibuprofen because they can't help you. Right. But then if you're a business owner, you get a better health package, and you think about it. You're like, wow, I think I want to be a business owner. So if we can give them the taste of freedom and start to show them the direction it is to be self-resilient, to stand up, to be strong and be who we were meant to be. That is the key, is to give them back their identity. And the identity isn't just our clans, it's more than that. It's the feeling of our roots that are way deep in the ground that come up through us through generations. And once we give them that feeling back and they taste it and they understand it, then they'll be able to make more decisions, and we can conquer this mess that they've been pumping into us. So it's taken us this long to unravel it, and it's gotten really bad So we are in a very interesting time. It's an interesting time to be alive, but I think we can do it. But it has to be a taste of freedom. That's why freedom is so important.
I love that. I really, it's just so positive, and empowering, and to help get people out of the victim mentality. So
Right.
I'm not attempting to seed our reality with this at all, but just, let's pretend that the Democrats won the White House once again, or stole it again, or whatever. How are you planning to protect New Mexico from all of their crazy Green New Deal and climate crisis and eat bugs and social credit system and cashless,
Right.
Yeah.
I think I've been made for a time like this. I do think it's going to get worse. I do think they're going to do something nuts where our whole Washington will be gone. They're going to be controlling it. We're going to have to do the 10th Amendment first. You're going to have a governor that's courageous enough to do the 10th Amendment to parent and whip the federal government out of our state. I did have I guess I don't want to be all mystic or anything, but an inkling that it's going to get bad. We have to close our state down, not like a lockdown where we are doing it to protect ourselves. We will have to become self-reliant. We have to eat our own beef, our own agriculture, and we have to make sure that everyone's growing what we need in the state. We have the water, we have the means to it. We also have the greatest climate ever to be able to sustain a very beautiful agriculture environment for ourselves. We also have all the resources in the ground. We can get our petroleum, our refineries up, and we can put our own petroleum in our own tanks. We also can light up our own electricity. We have all about, what they say, 4, 5, 6, 700 years in the ground of resources. We can light up our cities and we can live on that energy for a very long time. I think we'll have to close down our roads, and we're going to have to self-sustain New Mexico. We'll have to close our borders, and we have to implore the people to stand up for yourself, arm yourself, plant your gardens, and take care of your children, educate your children. And we're going to basically lock ourselves in, but we're one of the only states in America that can self-sustain. And once we do that, we'll let that, something happens on the outside, that's okay. New Mexico, we can save ourselves. And more people will come. And so we're going to be able to create an environment. So even if the dollar crashes, we are such rural New Mexicans. We all have skills, services, and product that we can trade. So we can go to the bartering system if we have to. We're already trading for things. People that can't afford plumbing, for instance, we'll say, well, what can you trade for us? And some guy does electrician work. So if our house needs something and his house needs something, then we can trade. So you see it, bartering system can take place of the actual American dollar. But we also have silver and gold here in New Mexico. We can begin to mine again. We can actually back it by God's money. God's money is gold and silver. And so we will be able to create our own banking system as well. We can get rid of taxation where we become self-sustaining and we only trade across value for value. And I think that's where our America needs to go back, but we could be the cusp of the forerunner of how to do this. And we can begin to export our supplements, whatever we exceed in, we can export that as well. We do have water. There's tons of it under the ground. Technology is here. We have the labs here. We have some of the greatest minds in New Mexico. We can tap into it. I think we can self-sustain. So this is exciting for me because it's the biggest challenge that I've ever felt that could happen. So even if the Democrats, completely take over America, I think New Mexico can be one of the biggest beacons of hope and light. But it has to be done through Indian country because we know how to self-sustain. We have been abused, oppressed, suppressed, even persecuted for so long that we know how to survive, and we will teach the American people, this is how you beat communism. This is how you become self-reliant off Mother Earth. And this is how you take care of your babies and your children. And this is how you pray. So this is what we're doing is we have to all believe together that one nation under God, but at the same time, we have to take care of our own home and clean it up and become self-reliant and beautiful once again. So I do have hope, and that's why I'm in this race, because I'm the only one that can see the worst of it, but I also see the light.
Yeah, I really appreciate that you have such an expanded perspective and such a deep multidimensional understanding of what's really going on to be able to safeguard us in case of worst case scenario. Of course, my prayer is that doesn't come to pass, but I love
right.
Yeah, but that you're
But we're ready. Yeah, we're aware, we're ready, you know.
Yeah. Well, Karen, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to drop in with you. How can the folks support you? What can we do to ensure your victory?
Everyone needs to know the Bedonie name, Bedonie, BedonieTough.com. Go there, learn more about me, watch all my videos, become a Bedonie, not just a supporter, but educated on who I am. And then you need to speak about me everywhere, in churches, grocery stores, gas pumps, anyone you can come in contact with, your family members. Once they know my name and they find me and they hear me speak, I think we have them. We have their vote, because I am saying what your heart is screaming for. I am saying what the Rhinos won't say. I am not bought and paid for. I am absolutely clean. I am going here and I owe nobody nothing. I'm going to fight for the people. And this is exactly what we have to do, is really talk about the corruption, talk about the bad stuff, but then also work forward and look toward the light and to the good of everything. So in order for someone to really help me, they have to get out there. People are doing their own things. Even the kids are painting rocks. They're putting Bedonie rocks all over the state. And they're painted turquoise, so because I wear a lot of turquoise and stuff, so that they're putting them all over. And they have scripture behind it. And it's the scriptures that are moving them, or the reason why they're voting for me. We are a nation of God. And so if we can keep praying, ask all those for prayers for me and protection for me and my husband, my children, because we are talking the truth, and the truth is scary for a lot of people. But just talk, just keep spreading the word, get out there. And I think I'm going to be driving through your community. I think within the end of the month, we're going to do a statewide parade, and I'm going to drive every town, maybe every road. And it's going to take me about 2 weeks to do it. And I'm going to be flying my flags, and it's going to be in the name of God.
Wonderful. Thank you, Karen. And are you still doing your podcast?
I am. I want to do it again, but we've been on the road. So I did the Great Debate for 20 days. It was 20 venues and 20 towns. I think we had 16 of them, but I also had other events tucked in there inside of it. So I haven't really been able to cut any video with my girls, because they're the ones that do all my video and they help me. And so we were on the road, and it was really hard to upload, because the threshold, you have to have a hard line. And so we were on the road, so it was really difficult, but the podcast is good. I have a girl, her name is Kimberly. She was trafficked. She's a missing, murdered Indigenous Navajo woman, and she wants to tell her story. So I might do her interview soon enough. And she was really wonderful and amazing. And I just wanted to tell her story, and also to show the left Democrats that no, you cannot carry that flag, because you did nothing to help her. She went to the Democrats, she talked to MLG, she talked to Deb Holland, but they did nothing for her. So we're gonna carry her flag for her and tell her that, you know what, she can become healed like me. I'm a healed Native American. She can heal from this, and she become one of the most amazing forces of education in this matter. So we will have our podcast going again, but it just takes a little bit of time. But yeah, I really love enjoying doing it as well.
Yeah, I love that you're doing that. I love that your message is so empowering, and that's really what you're leading with. And I encourage everyone listening to check out the podcast, because you do detail your policy, your aims, all the solutions. And I have so much respect for that, because you're clearly, leading with heart and coming from a place of integrity, which is so rare. So I just want to thank you so much for everything you're doing for New Mexico, for coming on today. We're all rooting for you. You have our vote for sure. I'm excited to see you in office.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for having me here. I really enjoyed this. It was great.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Karen. Have a beautiful day.
You too. God bless. Bye-bye.
Thank you. You too.